but then they pull out some pretty damn good shots with those. So we'll have
I'm
to
a
see how
believer.
it goes. Let's see what that Kodiak 4 is bringing here. 2 Gauss rifle, 2 PPCs. Take a look at that's an asymmetrical build. It looks like everything might be in the right arm here, and it is. So this is a right-handed mech. You can see those dual Gauss rifles up on the shoulders and the dual PPCs right there in the hand. So they have shield side and they have an ASIM side. So the ASIM build here, that means he's going to be a little bit better off doing some side peeks instead of some top peeks, which means he's going to be exposing quite a bit of his mech doing that. But if you can drop the Gauss and PPC really quick and then twist away, you can get that shield arm to bear. This is a gigantic shield, way bigger like even the Centurion shield. And that thing can protect your mech quite a bit. Initial movements here by INX, they are kind of slowly moving up towards the Epsilon side. They have sent some of their guys up top, Hunchback 2C and the Griffin 1E Sparky. His build on that is, if I can click on it properly, 3 ER large lasers for the Sparky, so definitely going with a much more tradey. So we're going to have a little bit of a standoff, tradey versus tradey.
And we've seen that before, yeah.
And they attempted, Widowmakers attempted to get a snag on Theta, but it's very difficult to do that because as soon as you step on the point, they're going to just scrape your armor, and if they do scrape your armor, it locks out the cap for 5 seconds, and that's going to be almost impossible to get that cap. While they are messing around with that, INX is sending their Panther over to Epsilon, and they're going to be up on the tickets here, and it's going to be on Widowmakers to make a move. Pretty decent spread by Widowmakers, getting their longer range weapons to bear here. I want to say a majority of them are, well, ER large lasers on the Widowmaker side as well. They both
the
teams
Grasshopper
went
does
very
have
long
ER
range.
larges, but not all of their mechs are ER large. Their
No, the
Enforcers
Enforcers are
standard
large. Yep.
And the other Grasshopper is actually the Black Knight build, 3 large pulse, 4 mediums.
Very long range trade here. I want to say both of the Kodiaks might be DACA builds. Let's see. Ultra AC-10s, Ultra AC-10s.
Yep.
So I would say even though Widowmakers does have some ER large lasers, they're a little bit more brawly than INX is. And I don't know if they realize that or not. It's, you know, you can sit there and trade with your ERs, and if the ERs are doing a very good job trading, that's fine, but they're going to have to at some point realize that they're getting pelted with this Gauss PPC. But if you can keep this stuff downfield and actually land it here, he might be able to turn some of these numbers around. But he is taking a whaling now, 82% on Comrade. He took most of it to the left arm, but his center torso is orange on the armor. So that wasn't a really good trade, I don't think, for him. I really think it's, oh, this is going to be a big strike here. Nice,
that was a
good,
big strike,
solid
absolutely.
landing right on both of the Kodiaks. Good placement for that strike for INX. I think Widowmakers is going to need to make a move here.
Yeah, they've got to get a little more aggressive than this. They've only got a couple mechs trading at these ranges, and those mechs are starting to get beat up. There's only so much you can do when you're outnumbered on this trade. It's just not going to go in your favor most of the time.
They're definitely not winning the trades. They got their DACA Kodiak 3 down to 73% now.
And that hurts.
I really think that even though they have some ER larges, they should be using those as some sort of overwatch, as just for a cover on their approach, and it looks like they might be trying to move up now. I think they just realized that they're losing the trades. It's going to be on them to put pressure on Theta and at the very least start getting into their optimal and start landing some of these shots. So we're going to have an initial peek up over Theta. INX has a really good power position there. They're just all watching all of these firing lanes, just waiting for somebody to peek their head out, and they're going to be able to deal some significant damage to the first mech that peeks. This Kodiak 3 bravely peeking up over the right side. Does get a PPC to the face, but they are starting to toss some shots.
And they're committing that way.
Here we go. They are committing around the right side. Not sure if that was necessarily the best angle to take, but they're playing the power position. They're trying to shoot as they go. So they're attempting to get their opponent's heads down as they approach, which isn't necessarily a bad plan here. INX seems to be, they have one guy split off to the left side, the Sparky with ER larges. They can't ignore him, but Widowmakers is getting into the range that they want to be in, so now it all comes down to focus. Can they get the focus on their opponent?
Did they not? Did they take enough damage, or did they do they have enough armor to share at this point?
The lights are getting up on the Kodiak 4 and getting some decent shots on him. It looks like he lost his weapon arm and potentially his Gauss, so he might not be useful at this point. that Kodiak 4, they're ignoring him. I think
yeah, they're doing a great job ignoring him. I think he is sticked, absolutely.
Some of them are still unfortunately hitting him. They need to get off of him. INEX is rotating some of their guys around back to the Theta side, but they're actually starting to get run down a little bit here. The guys in the back are just kind of finishing off the stick Kodiak, who's tanking very well.
Yeah, they need to not go on that Kodiak at all. They've got to use their firepower.
He's dead now. They just took care of him, and now the Hunchback coming back around, getting chased around by the Jenner 2C. Good job putting pressure on him, down to 51%, and he should be going down really quickly
he just
here.
Goes down.
And Widowmaker's making that aggressive push. It looks like this is going to go in their favor. Let's see what the remaining two lights, the Spider 5D and the Panther, which against an Oxide, I would put it for the in favor of the Oxide every time.
And I must say, I'm a little disappointed in the Panther. It doesn't have any PPCs, and they are so fun on that mech.
What is he bringing? Medium lasers?
He's bringing 3 medium lasers and a large pulse.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in this situation where the brawl got up in your face, they probably did better than the PPC.
Probably
overall,
did better,
and that's fine. But
I think those initial trades would have been better with the PPC, though.
And that is true. That is definitely true. I do think that Widowmakers did a good job identifying that they weren't trading well and that they had to go, and that was a perfect call by them to send them through.
Absolutely.
That was a very good fight. They are very hurt. They are very hurt, but they filtered out very well. They protected their mechs very well, and they focused very well. And I think that was very well played by Clan Widowmakers. It's almost like they're a comp team or something.
Almost.
Almost.
And I have to say, the biggest thing, the nicest thing to see there was that Clan Widowmakers, for the most part, when that Kodiak was sticked, they switched right off of it. And
the only guys that messed with them were the guys that had nothing better to shoot at. And it was the dudes in the back. I saw the guys up in front just walking right past them. But very good heads-up play, taking out the ASIM build on that Kodiak first and foremost. Before, you know, the left arm, the shield arm, didn't even get taken out. So is that the fault of Elusive Man in the Kodiak 4 not shielding properly, or was it just a really good,
accurate fire,
very accurate fire that just strips that shoulder and takes the arm with it?
The other thing you can do if you're willing to do it is to wait until the Kodiak goes to shoot you, has to face you to do that, and essentially you just trade damage right at that point if you're confident in your abilities to hit that target and you have the armor to give.
Damage on both sides, though, pretty good. Obviously in favor of CWM, but INEX didn't get rolled over.
No, they didn't.
They did.
There were a lot of really damaged mechs.
They did some decent damage, but they weren't able to focus those mechs down. And I think the initial charge by CWM, I like to call it the power position, moving power position. That's what I'm coining it. I like to coin it that way. But let me bring up the map here and show you what I'm talking about. Initial setup here is D3 for Widowmakers, and I guess that would be Bravo 4 to Charlie 4 for INEX, setting up all along this ridgeline here. Yeah. So Widowmaker's trading very poorly, and you can't sustain that very long. It's 2 caps to 2 caps. They weren't able to snag Theta because their lights got chased off the point. So that was a good heads-up play by INEX to keep them off of Theta and keep the tickets in their favor. So we even made the call. It was going to be on Widowmakers to make the move. Epsilon going to INEX before Widowmakers took Kappa. The tickets then in favor of INEX and forcing that movement, forcing that call. So not only do you have poor trades to worry about that makes you
now
move,
you've got the caps,
but you've got caps to worry about as well. So good heads-up play by Widowmakers to make that call. If they stayed there much longer, they would have just continued to get worn down, and we could have seen this go the other direction if that happened. So the call was made at the right time. Could have been made even a little bit sooner, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But they were trying to get some of those ER larges, and especially we saw the Kodiaks trying to do as much as they could with those Ultra AC-10s at that longer range. I just don't think they were necessarily connecting with them. So the first thing is we see them moving up to the right of Theta like this. Originally, I'm like, oh man, I don't think that's the best move because you're exposing yourself to the other team. But the thing that changed my mind instantly is we saw every single one of them facing into Charlie 4 and just wailing on INEX, and that forced those mechs to drop back, and that's the moving power position where you're exposing yourself completely to the enemy team, but you're using your superior firepower to just drill into the enemy, that anytime they peek out, you snapshot them, and it makes them duck back like, whoa, I can't peek that. Now you just allowed yourself to get up into that optimal range for a majority of your weapons, and you can sweep in and finish the job. That is huge. Now, against like a tier 1 or a Div A style team, the power positions definitely still work, because you see the accuracy is significantly higher for both teams. But the team that's holding the ground will typically kill at least 1 mech on the approach, maybe 2, and if they don't, they're usually going to die.
Yep.
Unless they're doing some sort of fallback. So Inex did not do any sort of fallback to like any extreme range or anything like that to keep the damage output going. And I think that might have been the right idea, because if they had tried to fall back, they wouldn't have dealt any more damage on the approach. And at that point, even if they do fall back, Widowmakers is still inside their optimal range, and they're still going to pound you, and now they have cover to work with. You know, you just backed yourself into the corner. So I don't think that would have been the right call. But what I do think is they needed to try and get a little bit more focus on the Widowmakers as they approached. They might have been a little bit too timid as they start getting wailed on from that moving power position. They don't peek as much. They're not focusing on the same target, and we saw a lot of mechs dropping down to the 60% mark for Widowmakers, but none of them were dying.
Yep.
And that was the key.
I think the other thing there is, like, the timing on that push, like you said, and this kind of relates back to what you were just talking about here. If Widowmakers had waited a little longer to push, and you saw maybe another 5% armor shaved off each of those mechs, I think they would have been dying. Mm-hmm. I think if you waited much longer, Inex would have had the opportunity to get those kills, because at the end of those matches you saw a lot of cord structure, a lot of bright red internals on Widowmaker's mechs. So, you know, a lot of MWO comes down to movement and timing, and that was one of those where I think another minute or two might have gone the other way.
Absolutely. And, you know, this wasn't necessarily a very close result, especially in the scoreboard. But this is one of those things where if Inex goes back and figures out what they did wrong and cleans it up a little bit, they could have potentially won this if they had the opportunity to do that ahead of time. The Panther, if you're going to bring a Panther, why not bring a longer range Panther for the harassing capability? Maybe they could have put a little bit more damage earlier on Widowmaker, but at the same token, maybe that would have encouraged Widowmaker to make a little bit of a quicker move right off the bat. But if you're going to bring like a more brawly Panther, then why not bring a more brawly light mech, like an Oxide, like a 2C, or something like that? And that mech alone during that fight could have made such a huge difference. We saw the Widowmaker Jenner 2C and the Widowmaker Oxide just having a field day with the Inex mechs once the brawl started, and I think that was a big tipping point. On top of everything else, just watching these light mechs zipping around uncontested. There's no streak boat worried about them. There's no other Oxide worried about them. They're able to freely roam and just have fun blowing up the rear torsos of the Inex mechs. And I think this one could have potentially just been lost in the mech lab for Inex. And I hope they're watching, and I hope that they reevaluate those mechs. And if they are going to bring them anyways, reevaluate their purpose and their role and how you're going to control the map with those mechs. Because essentially, seeing the Panther and what was the other one? The Spider 5D at the end there. It was a little disheartening. Yeah. It's like those mechs aren't going to be able to win you the match now. I mean, they didn't contribute before very much. And they're not going to contribute now that everybody's dead. So it's a bummer. So that was Drop 4, Widowmakers versus Inex. Widowmakers taking it pretty cleanly. It was a good fight, though. And
yeah, it was a good fight.
We're going to be heading into Drop 5 after the break. I got to find another video to put up here. If anybody's got cool suggestions for something to put up that I'm allowed to put up, let me know. I'll see if I can get some more replays or something going here, just so you guys have something to watch. But we will catch you after the break for Drop 5. See you guys in a little bit.